So let's get on with my webinar for you today. Many of you score 6.5 with your writing. I appreciate that must be very frustrating. There are a couple of reasons I can see why this is happening. Over the months I've been teaching this group of people who want to get to 7 to work for the NHS or another health authority in Europe. Some of you want to go to Ireland, some of you to the UK. Both require 7 at IELTS to achieve that. One of the problems is, I think, you're spending too much time on task 2, on the essay. I've reiterated this several times, that if you do that, it's actually a waste of time. Let me show you what I mean. I'll go to my next slide. So as you all know, the writing tasks for IELTS are allotted 60 minutes, 1 hour. There are 2 tasks. Task 1, a report based on some data. It could be graphs, could be charts, bar charts, bar graphs, whatever you want to call them, line graphs, pie charts perhaps. Could be tables where you don't get anything graphical, but everything's in numbers. There's usually less information on those, or it might be one of the different types, diagrams, maps, or processes, cycles, that sort of thing. It's quite important. Task 1 is not to be ignored, but task 2, the bigger one, people tend to spend more time on this. So let's have a look at this. Task 2, an essay in response to a question provided by IELTS. In other words, you can't sort of write a standard essay of your own. It'd be too easy for people to have one in their head and just to regurgitate the same thing. So it's a new title which you don't get until you're in that room. The formats, the types of essays are quite varied. You might get an argumentative, good and bad, for or against, advantages, disadvantages, that sort of thing, sometimes called the discursive essay. You may get an opinion essay where you're presented with some situation and you're asked, what do you think of this? You may or may not be required to bring in the other side. By careful reading of the question, you'll find that out, whether you can include an opposite balancing side or whether you just need to talk about one thing. Or we might get problem and solution essays. You're presented with a problem and you're asked to perhaps describe the history of it or to describe the problem and to give a solution. Or you might be asked for a descriptive essay where you're asked to describe a particular situation or a topic which the IELTS examiners have set for you. So 2 tasks. Always remember there are 2, because let's do some basic maths. Those of you who saw a post on the Facebook page will be familiar with this little thing. Task 1, 150 words as a minimum, 20 minutes, 33%. Now the 150 words minimum is just a guideline. You need to be above that, but you don't have to write 300 words. Somewhere above it is fine, somewhere above, but not double. Task 2, 250 words, so that's considerably longer. It's not double the length of task 1. You don't have to write 300 words, but they've given you double the time. You'll notice 20 minutes would be a sensible split. 20 minutes for task 1, 40 minutes for task 2. The reason being, those percentages at the end. Task 1 accounts for 33% of the mark. Task 2 accounts for 67%. Therefore, let's do a bit of maths on this. A perfectly written, and I mean band score 9 by perfectly written, something which I would do on a good day. I won't get 9 every day. I might wander slightly off topic or make a couple of errors and get me down to 8.5. So a perfectly written band 9 scored essay in task 2 with no task 1 will give you a band score of 6 or 6.5. I paused for a moment to let that sink in. Even if you wrote band score 9, which I haven't seen many in my life, native speakers who need IELTS to go and live in Australia or New Zealand or something like that, very rarely do they write a band score 9. That's perfect. That's couldn't be improved. Fantastic grammar, huge lexical resource, really flows and is easy to read, logical progression. That's a band score 9. You don't have to get near that. You're 2 band scores below. But if you take much more than the 40 minutes, and that might be because you write a lot more than 250 words. So if you do that, you've eaten dramatically into your time allowed for task 1. So please see them as together. Task 2, the long essay taken apart, is easy to do in an hour or an hour and a half. You can get a pretty good essay. You've time to edit it, time to look up something in a dictionary if you're doing it from home, but that's hardly a fair test. So I'm telling you, oh, this is a band 7 essay, definitely. Or, oh, this is a strong 6.5. All you'd need to do is this, that, maybe think about doing another thing. And I feel that you're getting, right, I can do it. I can produce band 7, even an occasional 7.5. But I want you to be honest with yourself. Did I do this in 40 minutes? From first seeing the title, brainstorming it, getting a plan written down, doing it, writing it, then editing it. If that took you more than 40 minutes, task 1 suffers because you can't write the task 1 in less than 15 or 20 minutes. Maybe you could go a couple of minutes over your 40. These are just suggestions. They're all in one. Those of you who have not taken the exam, the writing section is all in one. So it's up to you how you split your hour. But I've seen so many people have said, oh, I did a good essay, but then I ran out of time for task 1. I didn't do much past the introduction, or I just quickly wrote it. That's where this little mathematical illustration comes in. Even if you wrote a perfect one with no band 1, or let's say you wrote 7 or even 7.5 in task 2, but then your task 1 is down at 2 or 3 or 4, it's a 6.5. So many of you, I know, can write band 7. But your paper comes back from IELTS with 6.5 for writing. I think it's timing, and the timing comes about from the number of words. 250 is not the maximum you're allowed. It's the minimum that IELTS want to see, but it's also a guideline. You don't need 400 words. You don't need 350 words. You can write a band 9 essay with 251 words. You might need a little bit more. You might need to go to 300, even 320. Occasionally, if you can write quickly and neatly, 350. But that's 100 words over the minimum. Make sure you don't go 10 minutes over the amount of time you should be spending on it. It's an appreciable amount, 67%, but 33% is waiting in task 1. So I've gone on about this at length because I think you have to learn this little formula well. 40 minutes, more than 250, but it needn't be much more than 300. Okay. So a band score 7 task 2 coupled with a 6.5 task 1, what will that give us? Band 7. That's all you need. I don't want 8 because you can't write it fast enough and accurately enough. Band 8 is nice if we can get it, but all you need is 7, and that would get you 7. Score 7 at task 2, then you can drop a band, half a band there, and you're still getting 7 because this is 67%, but this is still making up 33%. Okay? So, what makes a band 7 essay? What lifts a band 7 essay from a 6 or a 6.5? Well, an examiner is looking under 4 areas. I will put up, after the webinar, I will put up links to, or perhaps the full thing. This is too big to fit on a page. You have to really, on the PowerPoint, it's too big. So that thing I'm holding up at my window, this is publicly available, so I'll send you links to download it. And this has come from British Council, IDP, University of Cambridge, the 3 stakeholders of IELTS. They've published these so that the public and you as candidates can see what an IELTS examiner is looking for. Very useful document. So I'll make that available afterwards. I'll put it on the Facebook page. If you don't do Facebook or you can't get to Facebook, drop Kate or myself an email and I will make sure you get a link sent by email. I can do that. So what this does is split the marking criteria, the template that the examiner must mark against, into 4 areas. These are task response. Well, basically that just means how well can you answer the questions. Into coherence and cohesion. This just means when the examiner reads the sentence, do they know what it's about? Is it halfway sensible? And cohesion, that's about sticking together. It's a good word for an essay. Is it coherent? Does it have cohesion? Does it stick together? And by that I mean, does it flow nicely? Is it all related? Do we talk about things that are linked? It's quite difficult to picture this, but you'll know it when you read it, when you produce it. The essay flows, and it's not difficult to know what's happening in it because you've been informed by the writer that this bit's coming next, and oh, I mentioned that because it was connected to this. However, think about this as well, and the whole thing's interlinked. It's not just a set of bullet points. Here's another thing I've noticed with a lot of your writing. You think that the examiner is testing your knowledge on the topic. He's not. He doesn't care. Doesn't care how much or how little you know. The examiner wants to see how much English you know. So the task topic is relatively unimportant. And obviously, if you've been living in a cardboard box and haven't left the cardboard box for 10 years, some of the questions will be difficult. But you haven't. You've all got contact with people. You talk about everyday topics which affect your country and the world. So you're able to talk about most of the topics which are there in IELTS questions. What you're not being examined on is how much you know about the topic, because the topics are carefully chosen that everybody will know something. None of the questions are so obscure, so difficult, that a reasonable cross-section of the candidates will be able to write about it. You might get the odd person who knows nothing whatsoever about a topic. That's kind of bad luck, because the topic areas are split into fairly learnable areas, and you can inform yourself about those areas. So it must be cohesive, meaning it sticks together, and we're not just giving a bullet-pointed statement of everything we know about the topic. We pick a main point and we develop it, and we support it with examples, with reasons why. If they're personal examples, all the better. That doesn't have to be. You could say, for example, people in Africa have been known to. So things that you pick up just by living a life. You see TV, you watch Discovery Channel, Animal Planet, even the news, the international news will show you all sorts of things which happen abroad, which can give you the world view on it. And a great deal of it happens in your own country. No country is apart from the world now. So if we talk about a global problem, well, you'll be able to see examples of that problem in your home countries. Okay, next one, lexical resource. Well, what does this mean? Well, lexical is to do with words, and resource, whether you've got some. So lexical resource, how many words you know, really, and whether you use these words in an appropriate place. So we'll look in more detail at what that means at band 7 in a moment, but basically it's the words you use. And the final of the 4, grammatical range and accuracy. Now, if we keep using the same grammatical constructions perfectly, you'll get some marks for those, but you won't get any more marks. So the more different grammatical structures you can use, the better. If they're things which you should have learned in your first year or 2 of English, they've got to be accurate to get to band 7. And that includes prepositions. I know some of you have problems with prepositions when mapped against IELTS. For example, those of you in the Philippines use prepositions in a slightly different way to any of the models of English I've seen. Indian English, Singaporean English, British English, American English, even Australian English, your fairly close neighbors. Filipino English doesn't use everything in the same way, in particular prepositions. So the examiner will probably be from Australia, the UK, possibly from your home country, someone who's very good at English. To be an examiner, you've got to be able to notice what's good, what's bad, obviously. So the grammatical range and accuracy, if it's right by your education system, it may not be right by international English systems. So you need to sensitize yourself to the use of, in particular, prepositions. 1 or 2 isn't going to impact your mark greatly, but when it's everything, all the way down, all the way through the essay, that's going to chip away at your mark. And something else which is going to keep you down at 6.5. So grammatical range and accuracy, what different ideas you can, different constructions you can show that you can use, and are the more simple ones, the simple pieces of grammar, are they accurate? So let's have a look in a little more area what band 7 means. So task response, the first one, basically, have you answered the question? So the examiner is looking for looking at the small type there. There's a lot of detail and it goes through all the bands. I haven't got the 0 to 5, but I've got 5, 6, 7 and 8 and 9 here. So I've got fairly detailed examples, but let me tell you, the examiner's sheets are far more detailed. So there are ways that the examiner can decide, is this 6.5 or does it show enough to be in 7? So there's a lot of judgment from the examiner, but this is a very detailed document which you can have a look at later in a decent type size. But this I've copied from band 7. That's the band we should be looking at. You need to have addressed all parts of the task. You need to present a clear position throughout the response. The examiner needs to know what you think. What is your opinion? What are you saying here? So if it's ambiguous, or you think, well, or you have opposite views, and we're not sure which is yours, then you'll lose marks. This is important. You have to present, extend, and support main ideas. So what would be better? 6 little points with no explanation, no support, no evidence that you even understand what those points are, or 2, maybe 3 well-chosen points, supported, examples given, reasons why. So there may be a tendency to overgeneralize, and or supporting ideas may lack focus. So you may not nail it, you might not get it exact, because we're at band 7. You have permission to fail, or to not hit the center of the target. It hasn't got to be perfect. 7 is all we're looking for. So there is room for error, but if you generally follow this, then your task response will be good. Let's look at the next section. Coherence, as I said, does it make sense? And cohesion, is it stuck together? So we're looking for logically organized information and ideas, clear progression throughout. Now this is when I can tell, did the candidate plan this essay or not? So I'll get something in from the beginning. So let's say this is what you might get. I like a variety of animals. I like cats and dogs. However, cats and dogs especially. However, of the 2, I would choose cats as being my favorite domestic animal. I don't like orange juice. So there's a crazy example, but the I don't like orange juice might have been from a previous paragraph, or a thought there and then. So it's not a stream of consciousness we need, but clear progression. We need it to make sense and to be logically developed, so that it's not just a bunch of bullet points, but it's clearly linked together, and one thing leads to another. Causes lead to effects. That effect then becomes the next cause, which leads on in turn to another effect. So link it all together so that it flows. So the candidate needs to use a range of cohesive devices. Wow, there's a word or a phrase. Cohesive device. Well, it's something to do with cohesion, isn't it? So a device that sticks things together. So a cohesive device, think of them as signposting words. A cohesive voice lets the reader know what's coming next. It's like a signpost in your writing. So a use of a range of cohesive devices. So it's no good saying and then, and then, and then, because that's not a range. But if you say words like subsequently, or finally, or turning to the last stage in the process, those are cohesive devices. So it's letting the reader know what's coming next. You can also use cohesive devices to raise awareness of the importance. You could say, however, the main point is, and then I know that, oh, this is very important. This is the main part of the essay. Or something like, There are many different colors available. However, and this is important, the most popular color throughout the decades was red. So cohesive devices let the reader know how important things are, how they fit with another, how things progress numerically, how they progress chronologically. So they're very important. Use a range of cohesive devices and you'll be hitting band 7+ in coherence and cohesion. And oh, lack of proofreading. This should say clear, sorry. So it presents a clear central topic within each paragraph. This is often a problem. We need one idea per paragraph. If you have more things to say, if they're not directly linked, use another paragraph. Or so this will, other ideas will be discussed below, that sort of thing. One idea, one paragraph. Now, next thing on our list, lexical resource, how many words you know, in other words. So you need to use a sufficient range of vocabulary to allow some flexibility and precision. So let's say you're talking about buying things. You could say buy. We bought this. So you've got a past tense. We were buying. Or I want to buy. But you could go a bit further than that. Why stick with just buy? You've proved to the examiner you know the verb to buy, and you know it as past, as continuous, and as a future form. However, wouldn't it be better if we could say purchase, or obtain, or even get? Just to use a different word, showing that it's not just buy, you know, but you know that purchase and obtain can have similar meanings. So showing a range of vocabulary works. That shows lexical resource. But be careful. Don't use the word unless you know exactly how it should be used. When you learn new words, look at how it fits with the words around it. Look at the context it's used in. Look at the words it collocates with. To collocate is to appear together frequently. Two or more words which appear together with more than random frequency. That's a collocation. And it's things like fixed expressions are collocations. Hello, how are you? I'm expecting to hear something like that. So this is a collocational phrase, which has become almost a fixed expression. You also need to put in a sprinkling of less common lexical items with some awareness of style and this thing we're talking about, collocation. So no good just putting words in here and there, that they've got to be working into the genre, the style of your writing, and they've got to be with the right words around them. So a word of warning, don't just learn words and no matter how diligently you learn the meaning of the word, you also need to know what it goes with. The word used by itself without understanding completely the words around it isn't going to be helpful. Permission to make mistakes again. You can produce occasional errors in word choice, in spelling, and word formation. You might show it as an adverb where you needed the adjective form. That's okay. If you've got and, you haven't shown sufficient lexical resource for band 7. If you can say things like additionally, or not forgetting the very important phrase like that with different phrases, different words. Woo, where are we going? with different words to show that you've got a variety. That's going to get you more marks, get you up into band 7. So final thing, grammatical range. Grammatical range and accuracy. Basically, this is a little grammar test, shows how well you can use grammar. Mistakes with higher level grammar, speak this morning, mistakes with higher level grammar are not so so harshly penalized as mistakes with basic grammar. So if it was something you should know and you get it wrong, they're quite harsh with it. If it's something that you're experimenting with, which is quite advanced, then you have permission to make a mistake. So you need a variety of complex structures. It's no good speaking always in the past tense. You need to be able to switch when you're talking about the future. You need to change those verb forms. You need to show that you've got a good understanding of the tense system and of how expressions work. Grammatical range, it's important. You need to be able to produce a number of error-free sentences. Most of you, even at band 6, band 6.5, can do that. You need to produce frequent error-free sentences of some sophistication. I don't just mean a simple sentence, but quite a complex sentence showing a bit of complex grammar. And most of you can produce error-free sentences. If there's a mistake in every sentence, can't be band 7. The final thing in grammatical range and accuracy, you need to have good control of grammar and punctuation, but you can make a few errors. So you need to be able to control it. In other words, you can use it effectively. You need to be able to know how punctuation works. But if you occasionally forget the commas or don't put a question mark or exclamation mark at inappropriate places, that's okay. So what does this actually mean on the ground? Well, let's have a look at an example of a question. So, environmental degradation is a major world problem. What causes this problem and what can we do to prevent it? So what type of question is this? I'd like you to use the chat box now. Could you type into the chat box what sort of format this is? Problem and solution, open-ended, an open-ended essay, a descriptive essay. We've got a fair number of people saying problem and solution. Somebody's just said opinion. So right, we've had descriptive, we've had opinion, but the vast majority of you are saying problem and solution. That's what it is. It's giving you a problem. We get the hint when the question says, what causes this problem? And you might say, what can we do to solve it? So we solve problems, we have solutions to problems. So yes, there are keywords there, and it's a problem and solution essay. So one of the most common things they talk about is the environment, because we all live in an environment. We can all see examples of good and bad practice with our environment. Seeing a couple more in the chat box. Let me see if I've got anything I could look at. Open-ended questions, problem and solution. Yes, it's more of the same. So thanks very much for that. I'm pleased that the majority of us have said problem and solution, because that's what it is. We see this commonly because it's around us, it's everywhere. Other common themes to do with environment might be about traffic or global warming. So I know you're not scientists involved with the environment or with global warming, but it affects all of us here on Earth. It might be a good idea to spend half an hour on the internet researching the major environmental problems around the world, because IELTS is very keen on it. It very often forms part of their questioning. So it might be overcrowding in cities, traffic problems, other sorts of pollutions, water pollution, people not having enough to eat through climate, moving on to climate change. So yeah, environmental based things come up quite often as a topic. So spend a little while exploring it in English and get some key vocabulary, perhaps. Get some words which will show the examiner that you've got an awareness of how to appropriately use that vocabulary. So it is a problem and solution essay. Let's have a look at what the examiner would need to see. So you've got 40 minutes. That 40 minutes is for you to budget. Don't spend 50 minutes on it. Your task one will suffer, and then all the time you spent on it's gone to waste. Remember the maths earlier. I would think you'll need 4 paragraphs in this. So you have to think, you have to plan, just a few keywords is enough, write and edit. 250 minimum, probably about 300 words in 40 minutes. So I would suggest you'll need an introduction, you'll need to explain the causes of the environmental degradation, and something to solve the solution. We're not asking you to solve the whole problem, but how can we fight it? How can we combat the problem of environmental degradation? And then bring it all together with a conclusion. So what you need to do to satisfy the examiner for task response is tell the reader what you're going to say, tell it, say how you will combat that problem, and then tell us what you've said. So tell us what you're going to say it, tell us what you've said. It's a fairly simple formula. Stick to it. Don't get off topic. Don't try and put too much information in. You'll run out of time. And then your mark will definitely suffer. So here's an introduction. This is not my writing. This is an example I've picked up from a vocabulary book. You were given the template, and then you had to put in the vocabulary about the environment. So this is part of an introduction. The next page is also following on. So there is no doubt that the environment is in trouble. Factories burn fossil fuels, which produce acid rain, and this kills trees. At the same time, greenhouse gases rise into the air and contribute to global warming, which threatens to melt the polar ice caps. Meanwhile, farmers clear huge areas of rainforest in places such as the Amazon to produce feeding land for cattle or wood for building. So this is, I think, a very good beginning to an essay because it's painting a background for the reader. Okay, we'll come back to some of the questions that were asked there later. So I think this is painting a good picture of the background. So there is no doubt that the environment is in trouble. This is good because we know immediately that the topic is the environment and that there's some problem with it. The environment's in trouble. And then immediately, as a reader, I would say, how? And the writer goes, well, factories burn fossil fuels, which produce acid rain. So here we've got a cause and an effect. And then this now becomes a cause, production of acid rain, and the effect of the acid rain is that it kills trees. So you can see how it's chaining together. we do this, this happens. When that happens, another thing happens. So already it's showing cohesive text. It's sticking together. Now, that's not all that's happening. We've got at the same time. So this is an example of a cohesive device. So at the same time, meaning together with, greenhouse gases rise into the air and contribute to global warming. So this is at the same time, it's at the same time as the factories burning fossil fuels. So it doesn't just produce acid rain, it also produces greenhouse gases. They're probably CO2, maybe carbon monoxide as well, both of which are greenhouse gases. But the phrase greenhouse gases, the examiner knows you know what they mean. Greenhouse gases rise into the air and contribute to global warming. Again, a cause and effect. Greenhouse gases rise up and they contribute to global warming. And then there's a following on. It's really chaining on. So, which threatens to melt the polar ice caps. So these sentences have got an economy of words. They're not endlessly looping and full of very wordy sentences which actually say not much. This is cause effect, cause effect, cause effect, chained together with cohesive devices which get straight to the point. I read some of your introductions and they state the same thing 2, 3, even 4 times, and I'm cutting whole sentences out and say, don't need it, redundant, redundant. Everything in this is new. It doesn't recap at all. It doesn't restate anything. So the whole of that first section up to ice caps, no repetition, some sophisticated vocabulary, the grammar was used in an accurate way, there's cohesive devices, there is no doubt that. So here I know I'm going to get a known fact, something in the public domain which everybody should know. It's got some some back referencing. This kills trees. This I know is the production of acid rain because it's the last thing we talked about. At the same time, another cohesive device. Rise into the air, nice expression. Contribute to global warming. It doesn't say and cause global warming, it says contribute, so it's one of the problems. It's all right, this is what we need. It goes on, meanwhile, so this is another way of saying at the same time. So meanwhile, farmers clear huge areas of rainforest in places such as the Amazon to produce feeding land for cattle or wood for building. That's a deceptively complicated sentence. It looks like about 20 words, but it says a great deal. This is not like some of your sentences because this is all pertinent. There's no looping. There's no redundancy. Quite often when I read students' essays, I think I'm reading a legal document, as if it's written by a lawyer or perhaps a Victorian novelist. There are too many words, which contributes to your problem. You haven't got the detail that you need in it. You're not supporting, but it's repetition or goes around the houses before getting to the point. So this sentence is a very good example of economy of style, of saying a lot in relatively few words. So meanwhile, farmers clear huge areas of rainforest in places such as the Amazon. I might be tempted to say that was this is what the writer wrote. I might be tempted to put a comma here after forest and here after Amazon, because this is a non-defining clause. If we took it out of the sentence, it still makes sense. but it adds so much more to say it was in the Amazon, but I might put commas there. But this would still be scoring well. We haven't got all the punctuation in it yet. To produce feeding land for cattle or wood for building. So why have they cleared it? Well, in order to do this, produce feeding land for cattle, or an alternative reason why they've cleared the rainforest is to get at the wood to use for building. So this would score highly. This is a good one. It goes on. Rivers and oceans are so heavily polluted by industrial waste that it is no longer safe to go swimming. So this is just giving us more problems with the environment. Here, I think it needs to have more example. So rivers and oceans are so heavily polluted by industrial waste that it is no longer safe to go swimming. You could say, for example, industrial pollution is evident at tourist beaches in my country or in some way that you know, which did not happen in the past. Cars pump out poisonous fumes, which that should be which we all have to breathe in. So cars pump out poisonous fumes which we all have to breathe in. You might put an example there. For example, in Beijing, there is a constant cloud of smog above the city, mainly produced by the increasing numbers of cars. Logging and overfishing are killing off millions of animals. Some of you may not know what logging is. When we cut a tree down and cut all the branches and roots off it, we get what's called a log. So it's the main trunk part of a tree. And here it's used as a verb. If we go logging, or if we log a forest, it means to cut it down. So logging and overfishing are killing off millions of animals, including whales, elephants, and other endangered species. So here we've got examples. Logging and overfishing are killing off millions of animals, and then it gives you a couple of examples. Whales, because of the overfishing, their food stock has gone. Elephants, they've lost habitat, and other endangered species. So we're making the examiner aware that we know that it's not just these two. In fact, all around us, cohesive device here to let me know that there's going to be a global idea, the big picture now. In fact, all around us, all living things, large and small, which comprise our finely balanced ecosystems, are being systematically destroyed by human greed and thoughtlessness. So an examiner reading this is going to be pretty happy to read it. It shows all of the things we're looking for. It's on topic, it's answering the question, it's showing some good vocabulary, a range of vocabulary, it's showing cohesion, it's showing coherence. The grammar in it is good. We've got a variety of grammar. So this sort of thing scores highly. What doesn't score highly is improperly planned essays which sort of wander along. You need to spend 3 or 4 minutes planning, which is another reason not to write 490 words. If you think, oh, 40 minutes, I've got to... You just start writing, and it's a stream of consciousness, and the examiner can tell this was not planned. You need to have a plan that you follow, then be ruthless with your plan. Cut out the unimportant parts, major only on the main points, and then your essay will hang together in a far better way. If you've got lots and lots of points, You can't possibly put examples for all of them. You'll run out of time. Even if you do finish it, you've then no time to edit it. So, a little insight into what the examiner looks for, an example of a good one. I toyed with the idea of putting an example up which showed things which were mistakes or which were not good, and I thought, no, I won't show that in case it sticks. I want to show the good one, and it's a thing that you can do to contrast what you've got in your writing. How does it stack up? Is it similar? So what I'm going to do is put this example as a post onto Facebook. So you'll be able to see this example as a post there. Then compare it with the sort of thing you've got and see. Then print this one off. I'll give you the link for this also. Print this off and see why this one would score highly. What does it tick all the boxes for band 7? And by reading a good example, you should be able to emulate or copy the style and the way in which it's written. So don't keep doing what you're doing. It's scoring you 6.5. You need to break what you're doing and change it in some way. If you continue doing what you've done, you'll get another piece of paper that says writing 6.5. And that's not what we want, is it? So to get to 7, less is more. Fewer words written in a far more supported way. Don't just give me an example. Don't just give me a statement and then move on to another statement. Yes, that demonstrates how much you know about a topic, but that's not what I'm testing. I'm not testing your knowledge of whatever the topic is. I'm testing how well you can explain and support and give examples to the piece of writing you've done, and how you can make it stick together, how it can flow nicely. And that's difficult to do in 40 minutes. So you need to practice handwriting it. And then when you send to your tutors, when you send to the tutor, copy what you've handwritten. Don't be tempted at that point to correct it or spell check it while you're typing it into Word as a document. Please type it onto the Word document in exactly the same way as you hand wrote it. In an attempt to prove, if you like, that that's what you're doing, we'll be asking soon that you handwrite it, perhaps take a photograph with your phones or scan it and send the handwritten piece of writing to us along with the Word document. Be strict with the timing. It's pointless being able to write better essays which took 55 minutes and leaves you 5 minutes for task 1. So that's absolutely pointless. 40 minutes. If you can't finish in 40 minutes, you've got to change something. You've got to make it shorter. You've got to filter out the information you've got at the planning station. You can't cover everything. You can't write 400 words. You can't write 375, I would suggest. If you're over 350, you've said too much. Edit it down. Most of the time, you repeat anyway. So try to make every sentence count, which will reduce the number of words you write. And hopefully, if it's stuck together with the correct grammar and vocabulary and cohesive devices, then you've got a band 7+ essay. Oops. So I'll now throw the session open for questions. If we could stick to writing to begin, then if we still have time, we can look at general questions for IELTS. So let's have a look. I've got 3 questions in the chat box. So Sherry asked, what if we put different paragraph per problem with solution? Is that examples should be in the body? Do you mean if you pair together the problem and then immediately suggest the solution? Yes, that could work. There's no one-size-fits-all template. Everybody has different writing styles, but yes, that could work. If you were to put, this is a problem, what I would suggest to solve this one would be X. Here's another problem, and to provide a solution for that one, we could try Y. So yes, coupling together the problem and then immediately the solution could work. Yeah, thank you, Terry. What would be the probable essay questions that will come out from the exam? Oh, please. No idea. Anything that happens around you and happens in every country is a possible target for an IELTS question. They do tend to stick to subject areas. If you're doing an IELTS test and want 7, you've had some education, so you might get questions about education. You'll know about travel, even if it's just traveling from home into town. You'll know about environmental problems because it's all around us. It's on the news. There are lots of debates about it. What else could it be? Healthcare, ideally suited for this group. Healthcare is a popular healthcare, or the lack of it, is a popular topic in IELTS. Whether we should do this or that, whether we should spend money on space exploration or better spent here on Earth, that's a popular topic. Just have a look through some of the textbooks or spend 10 minutes on the internet. You'll get a list as long as your arm. Okay. Nadine is asking, is it okay to write a problem solution essay with the format of first intro, second cause, what corresponding solution cause? Yes, that's similar to the thing Cherry asked, that you describe a problem and immediately do the solution. Personally, I wouldn't, but I've seen it work. Personally, I'd fully describe the problem first and then address put the solution afterwards. But this one works too. It depends how you can write it. But this takes, I would suggest, more words to do. So if you can do it with fewer words, fine. But it's no good tackling it in this way if it's going to produce 390 words. You won't have time. Now, Jamie, hello Jamie. What if we get 6 in the writing task, in writing task 1 and 7 in writing task 2? Yes, you would. 6 in 1 and 7 in writing task 2 will get you 7, because that's only 33%. This is 67%. So yeah, the average will be up to 7. Any other questions about writing? I've seen that in the chat. We've also got a Q&A. No, there's nothing in Q&A. Any more in chat? Okay, let's throw the question open to general IELTS then. Is there anything I can help? 6 in task 1, but 6.5 in task 2. That's a 6.5. The biggest portion is the 67%. So if the 67% is 6.5 and the task 1 is 6, that's 6.5, clearly. Okay. Right. Well, that's just about great for timing. We're just a little bit after the hour. So if there are no more questions, what have we got here? Someone's given me a good maths question here. What if we get 5.5 in task 2 and 7.5 in task 1? Can we still get 7? I'd have to put that to paper and see what it worked out at. But I mean, there's all sorts of permutations which will get you to 7. How many errors can we commit to still get 7? How long is a piece of string? I don't know. It depends how serious the errors were. If the errors produced unintelligible writing, not many. If they're small errors, maybe a little punctuation or you've missed the odd S, yes, you could still get to 7. But how many? Don't know. Depends on the magnitude of the error. How will I know my writing score for task 1 and 2? You won't. That's for Cambridge to know. So you'll never find out. The examiners only get that. Jamie's asking, I notice my grammar is affected when I use wrong prepositions and articles. So we really need practice. Yes, indeed. I hinted, Jamie, that I know you're from the Philippines, and I know Filipino English uses prepositions strangely when mapped against world Englishes. So yeah, sensitize yourself to what the rest of the world uses. I've spoken to people who said, yeah, we were taught that at school. Our newspapers print it like that. So it's a problem. You're going to have to read some international examples so that you can see how the prepositions are used. Articles, yeah. First thing we teach you, the last thing you get right. Fortunately, articles don't really affect the meaning. They're a niggly grammar problem, but meaning isn't usually affected. So good news there, I think. Great. Oh, Kate has put one up in response to Jamie. Thank you. Where can we find the links? We haven't put them up yet. I'm only doing the webinar. I said after the webinar, I'll put them up onto Facebook. So on the Facebook page, but give me time, be sometime later today. And Kate's answering that one on Facebook. What if we use another format in task 2? Is that a deduction in our score? Another format? Well, it depends on the type of question. But do you mean another format? That one was a problem and solution essay. So we've discussed a couple of ways to look at problems and solutions. How you tackle it is too big an item. What you put in it, however you tackle it, is more important. Planning to go to Japan. Planning to go to Japan this August and take the IELTS there. Do you think it would be different? No. I hope it's not anyway. IELTS, Cambridge University, the British Council, IDP spend a lot of money making sure that all the examiners are using the same set of criteria and mark in a consistent way. It's possible that you'll get some fluctuation up or down for a short length of time, but that's usually noticed fairly quickly. There are quality control checks in the system. One of the reasons why IELTS is quite expensive, because the number of things which happen behind the scenes that you don't see, quite extensive. There's a lot of things happening. What's the name of the Facebook page? SLC, there we are, Kate's done it. SLC-IELTS nurses, there you are. Do we really need to paraphrase in every question? Do you mean to paraphrase from the question that the examiners asked? Yes, of course. If you copy the whole question, they're not your words. Therefore, they come off your word count, and you get no you get no marks for the good grammar and the vocabulary in it. So you have to paraphrase the essay question, but when you're saying every question, do you mean all essays? Not sure what you mean on that one. Maybe you could ask the same question on Facebook and we'll have a look at it later. So I'm going to call a halt there. If you have any more questions, do go back to the Facebook page. and we can ask them there. Oh, I see a couple on Q&A. Let me spend just a minute or two addressing these. For agree or disagree questions, is it okay that I discuss all throughout the question one side only, not giving anyone on the other? Do you agree? Yes. If the question asks, do you agree or disagree with the following? Then all you're being asked to do is say yes or no. So yes, one side there. That one side is what you need to say. If it says discuss, then it's a different question. Okay. So open question. And I've got no more. Okay. So thank you very much for your time. I hope that's been useful. I'll put up the links to the marking criteria and the text from that essay onto the Facebook page. And I'll see some of you in our classes, or we'll write in email, whether we're doing face-to-face video or email sessions. And anything that strikes you, anything that you think, oh, I meant to ask this, put it on the Facebook page, or perhaps you could ask your own tutor. So thank you very much. Thank you, Kate. And those of you who are taking exams soon, good luck. So thank you and goodbye.